All right. I don't even know if I'm even going to get anybody to watch this live stream or anything, but for now, you're just going to be looking at a cool Christmas tree. I come to you all because I want to talk to you about what's going on in the industry. I just recently just watched Eva Marie's video about what's it called of what happened about with G. Willow Wilson, how she practically canned a comic book about Muslim extremism in a library or something, and it kind of dawned on me about what's going on in the industry and why is anybody just going to be just it just baffles me about this kind of censorship. I mean, we're seeing this again with stuff like you see like things like young yeah, it's gonna be locked actually this way. Oriented locked, rotate device back. Oh, fuck you. Yeah, so it's all this thing about censorship and there's just way too much censorship in comics and in video games. I mean, we've seen this with the whole thing with Rainbow Six Siege, the stuff of Young Yeah, and the stuff with when Young Yeah did that coverage about how they wanted to how Ubisoft wanted to globalize Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, I'm not a big Rainbow Siege 6 fan, but I know of the game and I know people who've played it, and the public outcry, even though the game industry is a way bigger juggernaut making billions of dollars, you're going to listen to your highest denominator on what gets put in the game, what the cabbage gets chewed, pretty much, and it really doesn't. And they just think this is a good idea of cutting costs and making money. But in the comic world, you get people like G. Willow Wilson and you get people like Mark Waid who think just because they are mainstream comic professionals, they have the right to piss on the fans. They have a right to do whatever they want. And no, you don't. You don't, because it's called a free market economy for a reason. Let the consumers buy it. I mean, I don't know much about this guy who's going to publish his book about Muslim extremism and about I saw the cover for it. I mean, the art, it looked okay, and I didn't really want to. I did not get a chance to watch DNC's video. I did watch Ava Marie's about the base sum of what it's about, and honestly, I mean, I don't really think the book was that interesting. I mean, but I do think but even if the book was not good, even if they say the book was a trashy book, no matter what it would have been be like, let the book be published. Let the consumers be the judge of what's going to be put into. Like, well, let the market decide for itself. And of course, these SJWs, they don't want to believe in that. And that's why I talked about the video game thing earlier, because I watched a video about Young Yeah talking about how the gaming journalism was so they're so divisive. They're so divisive about what goes on in the industry. I mean, they're so divided on what the fans like and what the industry wants. I mean, I'm just rambling because I'm just trying to put words together, but that they rather pander to these SJWs. I mean, these SJWs want to pander to the people like communist China and their censorship laws and stuff over the free market American economy. That shows you the mentality of an SJW, especially in the gaming journalism, whether it's IGN, whether it's GameSpot, whether it's Kotaku, definitely the Mary Sue, or any of these sites, or hell, even especially Anita Sarkeesian's ass. It's funny how they have keen to being more of a social justice narrative and all this stuff, and they tend to be more about censorship than actually wanting to make a good comic. I mean, actually make a good comic. And you know, it really doesn't make sense to these people. And that's why in the comic book world, the books that are being cut out and censored, I mean, do I think this book will ever get published? I think so. I mean, the same thing that happened with Mark Waid. I'm pretty sure those two British guys who wrote these books, And by the way, the British are suffering way more terrorist attacks and way more acts of radical Islamic crap than what's going on here in the United States. And I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know what they're going to do with it. But I do. This is the part where I realize that even if let's say Mark Waid, 9 times out of 10, it's going to get censored. Mark Waid, not censored. It's going to get settled. Sorry. Mark Waid's probably going to settle with Zach, your boy Zach of Diversity in Comics, and he's going to get a good sum of that $75,000 or settle at some other rate. But the fact that Mark Waid's would have to do that, I think Mark Waid is dumb enough to actually go through with this lawsuit. I think if his Mark Zaid buddy, if his lawyer is smart enough, he shall tell him, yeah, we need to just settle. We'll make a little bit and he's just doing this just to get probably some media attention, of course, with this stuff. And I believe it. I don't care what other people say. I believe it. But Mark Zaid and people like him, even if this lawsuit goes through, and even if let's say a year passes, by the end of 2019 or something, the courts finally make a decision, Zach wins, but at what cost? And by then, will there even be a comic industry by then? Because there's just so much censorship and so much poor book sales these SJWs, these NPCs can keep making time and time again until they realize, Papa Disney and Warner Brothers, they're not, I think Warner Brothers owns DC. They're not going to pay for that anymore. They're not going to care about comics like that. They're just going to license out the characters to other books, or they may just continue doing reprints of them. And I don't even know if they're even going to do reprints, since the SJW's bitching and complaining about that, and they're not even going to even bother with these books and stuff. Nice slippers. But that's why the title of this video is "The Comicsgate Needs to Be an Industry, not just a movement." And when EVS, Uncle Ethan, when he pulled out from Comicsgate for that short time and came back in, he pulled out of Comicsgate. I was kind of confused because I always thought that we were all on the same page. But then when I saw the Rakito Law video and that live stream they did, I realized we're not exactly on the same page. There are other people out there, which I didn't know, felt like one should just be a movement to push the industry to go back to center politics and actually make a very good comic book. And then you have the other side, which is EVS's side, that we need to make comics that are directly marketed towards the fans who who pay for these books. And I think that they are both kind of right. There are. But we have to face the reality that the comic industry is not going to go back to what it was. The comic industry has been infiltrated by the NPCs, the SJWs. At least in Marvel, Marvel's infested. Marvel, and they're backed by Papa Disney, who pushes this SJW stuff. Hence Freeform. Pretty much Freeform and ABC. If you watch ABC and any of those channels from Disney and stuff, there is a heavy pandering. And if those companies are individually pandering that stuff and they don't care, then 9 times out of 10, Papa Disney themselves, they obviously are going to be they are the masters of what is pushed is considered social justice is going to be on TV and what isn't. You're not going to see that overly pushed at the theme parks, but you're going to see it on TV. You're going to see it on the streaming service, and that's Hollywood in general. Hell, if you watch the last couple episodes, watch the last season of The Walking Dead, for example. God, that is pandering to the core. Hell, these last couple episodes have been pandering to the core, and it's like you got pretty much a NPC, SJW, feminazi, wet dream in one big package, wet fart package in one big sitting. And that is what it is. And I have 0 video watchers right now. But I don't know, I might be able to do a live stream. I might be able to get EVS. If I do a super chat, I might be having them go to my channel and have them watch the videos on here. But anyways, back to what I was saying. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, this video is just pretty much me talking about the comic book industry needs adjustment. Yeah, it'd be great to be a movement, but the books, I mean, the comic Marvel that you know, the Marvel that Stan Lee loved, the Marvel that we all know and love, is no more. It's never coming back. It never will come back. As long as these SJWs and as long as companies bend the knee to a bunch of vocal minorities on Twitter, which that's why I feel like Twitter is the worst invention that was ever made. Twitter is the worst thing that was ever invented by mankind. As long as they keep doing that, they're never going to exceed. They're never going to succeed. And I feel like that's why the comic book industry needs to be. That's why Comicsgate needs to be an industry. Like All Caps Comics. That's stuff that Ethan Van Sciver's his own in-house publishing. I mean, Splato Comics, in-house comics. I mean, All Caps Comics. They need to be its own company. I feel like now the whole thing with that whole Comicsgate thing that was that recent thing with what's his name? It was that from that alt-right comics group and stuff. That is not the answer. We want, as what Ethan says, and as I agree, I don't want to have political stuff like that in my books. If it is, it better be a subtle tone of that in that book. It doesn't need to be pandering. It doesn't need to be shoved down your throat. It just, as what Steve Jobs says, it just needs to work. And yeah, I know, ironically saying out the blue. Thanks, Steve. Great. I mean, Billy Richard, great save. But I'm just going off on this whole thing is that the industry needs to be, there needs to be a new company in general. There needs to be a new company of Comicsgate. Comicsgate needs to be, let's say, for example, All Caps Comics 3-4 years from now of Ethan's. Because I don't know, Zach's not really management material. He's good at pushing the envelope of his point, but Zach's not a businessman like that. Ethan has been in the industry for over 25 years, and so he has the capability. Let's say he makes All Caps Comics. Let's say All Caps Comics is a business. He gets all the Comicsgate professionals can get published under one roof. You will shake the world if that came to fruition. You would shake the world. It would be just like Image, except for Image, Todd McFarlane, he goofed up. He decided to go off to his toy line and practically let Image pretty much fall like a ton of bricks. Whether it's Ethan that does it, whether it's DNC does it, whether it's the Brett Weisers, whether it's Jeff Hicks of World Class BS or World Class Bullshitters, or even Jeremy, a proper Jeremy comic. Someone is going to fill in that void, and there's going to be a new company that's going to pop up, and where Comicsgate books are going to be published, and it's going to be an industry that could even overshadow. It could even go up there in the presence of Dark Horse or even Image itself. But I think the differences with this one is that you need to have more control with All Caps Comics to become a mainstream publishing company. You want something where it's not just EVS, but you're going to have a group of people here who are, the rules are simple. Make the comics you want to make as long as it's SJW and soy free. That's all it is, and it just needs to be like that, because in the game industry, even in the video game industry, this whole thing of censorship, now, this whole censorship stuff that they want to push, the reason why the fans are so adamant about this, because you give these SJWs, you give these publishers an inch, they'll go the extra mile and shove this whole globalist ideology ideas in censoring things. They think the Chinese market's going to be where it's at. And then, of course, the journalists are going to come after us saying that, oh, you are just a bunch of entitled people. You know what? And when that statement, what they say, motherfucker, you're actually right. We are entitled. We are entitled to it because we paid the $60 for the game. We paid to have a full-on experience with the video game. Same thing with the comic book industry. We pay $4 to even $20 for a comic book. I want my money's worth out of that, because that could be money I could be spending somewhere else. I could be spending it on a camping trip. I could be spending it on fishing supplies. I could be spending that on lingerie for my lady. I could do that for a lot of things. But instead, I decided to spend my time, get in a car, go to a video game store, go to a comic book shop, buy a comic book, and get out of there. But instead, you decide that, you know what, we're just gonna piss all over the fans. We're just gonna censor stuff just so we can fit the Chinese market. We're gonna have a cosplay, I'm not going to say cosplay Muslim, that's a DNC thing, but you're going to let people like Mark Wade, King Baby, and a cosplay Muslim, or any of these SJWs in Marvel to just flat out go out there and just censor out or even not publish, getting a book published or anything like that. No, that is BS. You know what about this, whether, for G. Willow Wilson, if you want to write a book about school shootings and stuff in America, go the fuck right ahead, because honestly, I'd rather have you write that than fucking Wonder Woman. I'd rather have you write that than Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman, even though I will say I do like the art, I love the art, I do think the art's interesting, the book is just, you're playing it too safe, Wilson. You're playing it too safe. Don't be afraid to write Wonder Woman, okay? I know you didn't do well. I mean, I know your Miss Marvel book kind of sucks. I actually know it totally sucks. But you have a new character. You're with a new publishing. Don't be afraid to write something like that. Or maybe you just want to toe the line to this SJW stuff. And I don't know. I mean, come on. I know, Wilson, I know you can do better than that. But then again, you want to just pander. You want to censor books. You want to get other books canceled and stuff like that. That's why the Mark Waid case needs to go through, whether it's settled or whether they go through court. They need to get that stuff out there. They need to get that shit out there. And if they need to go out there and they need to get that thing taken care of. If not, these people the bad guys are going to win. The bad guys are just going to step all over us. They're not going to let us have our books. They're not going to let us have our way. They're not going to let us have any of our books, and they're not going to let us have our creativity and freedom to do what we want. And it's unacceptable. It's really unacceptable. And the comic book industry, that's why I said Comicsgate needs to be an industry. There needs to be. But you need to find the right person who is an investor, someone who has the capital, someone who has a passion for comics, because we are seeing good comics, whether it's the Comicsgate crowd or even the non-Comicsgate crowd. Like the one book that I have been reading for a while that I really enjoy is Joe Benitez's Lady Mechanica, and it is a damn good comic with good art, a strong female character who's not a Mary Sue like Rey in Star Wars. And also, she has her own faults, but at the same time, she's a likable character, and it's a really immersive world and story. We're getting good books like that from those kind of people, but at the same time, they're not pandering to, because there is no major companies like DC or Marvel that could, constrain to them by this pity morale of these SJWs and stuff, and these pesky NPCs. This is just unacceptable. And that's why I propose the idea that we need to just get rid of the BS. That's what I'm saying. That's why we need to get away and get rid of the BS of the SJWs and create our own industry and bring them all over here. But you know what? They're not going to respond out of that and try to make better books. Instead, they're going to try to shut us down. When in truth, that's not how the industry works. That's how socialism, that's how communism, that's how the fucking Soviet Union works. That's not how capitalism works, people. That's business 101. In business 101, these SJWs should have learned in business class unless they slept through it. The customer is always right. The customer is always right. Even if the customer is wrong, the customer is always right. Go to your local Ollie's. There's always that billboard where Ollie says the customer is always right. The customer is always right. The same thing would happen with Rainbow Six Siege. The customer is always right, even if they're wrong. Just make that a priority, and also stop attacking the fans. You see the Comicsgate crowd, we're not attacking the fans. We want to hear the fans. They want to hear what we want and what they like, And somebody from high school always told me, one of our guidance, one of our teachers, he taught us about the lubricants of life is please, excuse me, thank you. That is what these comic book pros need to learn and go back to grade school, I feel like, to reiterate that into their thick little skulls. Please, excuse me, thank you. If you do that, you're set for life. Then, of course, if you want to read Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, but I just have those please, excuse me, thank you. That's the 3 rules. That's Billy Ritchie's 3 rules for life right there. And I don't know. I'm done ranting right now. I mean, this is the first live stream I've ever done with this channel. I mean, you've practically sat here for almost 20 minutes watching a Christmas tree. Whether you watch this in a replay or something, I'm going to push this out to probably on the High Council tonight when this is recorded. So you guys can check this out as a replay and tell me if you want to hear any more videos. I might chill out on the High Council, telling you go check out Billy Ritchie channel. I'm probably gonna be doing. I want to do more, maybe more live stream videos like this because I don't know exactly the kind of format that I'm gonna do, but Comicsgate needs to be an industry, not just a movement, because the movement is obviously not working because these books are still being made, even with male nipples in charge at Marvel. The books are still being made. There needs to be some sort of response to just making an actual comic book that's going, a comic book company that's going to actually be there for the fans and not just a political ploy. And I feel like that's what's going to happen with Hollywood, with all this SJW stuff in their TVs and media. Independent, it doesn't take much for independent things, like the thing with Star Wars, like the thing with not Star Wars, was Star Wars Resistance. Even Rooster Teeth, the people who made Red vs. Blue and Ruby actually looks better than the piece of shit that is Star Wars Resistance. I mean, I could sit there and watch Ruby and get a better story and get a better characters, and an all-girl cast for the remind you, better than Star Wars Resistance. Now Rebels was good, but Resistance looks like something that was just like leftover assets like Fallout 76. But that's just another thing. Tell me what you like about this video. Like, comment, etc. Questions, comments, concerns. Do your best or do your worst at this. And I will see you guys whenever I feel like it. And because I'm not doing this for money. I'm just wanting to rant because, well, that's what happens when 2 shots of tequila does that to you. All right, see ya. Goodbye and Godspeed.